It's good to be here and to have a chance to talk to you about some of our research at Forrester on how social intelligence can actually lead into influencer engagement and influencer marketing. For those of you who I've never met, my name is Nate Elliott. I'm a vice president and principal analyst at Forrester. I've been with the company for a little over a decade now, and I lead our coverage of social marketing and research onto social marketing. So what I want to do today is take you through some of the research that we've done about how social media fits into our marketing plans overall, before focusing in a little bit more specifically on the topic of today's event, and talk about how social listening can provide the foundation for a good social marketing program, but specifically to talk about something that we at Forrester think of as social reach marketing. And then to dive a little bit deeper still and talk about influencer marketing and its role within that social reach marketing category. But let me start with a big picture first and talk about how social media can and often should support a company's entire marketing program. And to do that, I want to introduce you to something that we think of as the customer lifecycle. I'm sure you've all seen the marketing funnel or the sales funnel. You understand this notion of generating awareness and driving people through consideration and preference and hopefully getting a purchase from them. And that sales funnel or marketing funnel has done a really admirable job for over 100 years now at helping companies understand how they get a customer through the sales process. But there are a couple of problems with that marketing funnel. Number one, it's not actually a marketing funnel. It is a sales funnel, and it was devised by a guy named Elliott St. Elmo Lewis more than 100 years ago. At the turn of the last century, he was the greatest salesperson for a company called National Cash Register, which we now know as NCR. And he had some time on his hands, so he thought about how he guided his prospects from awareness through interest and desire, and finally got them to take some action. And it's a very good model for getting one person to buy one thing from a company one time. The problem is, most of you probably want to sell more than one thing to more than one customer more than one time. The other problem with Elliott's model is it was based upon the media that was available more than 100 years ago, which meant it didn't do much to account for our ability as customers to interact with each other at the different parts of our customer life cycle. And it certainly didn't do much to account for digital or online technology. So over the past 5 or 6 years at Forrester, we spent a lot of time and a lot of survey space surveying hundreds of thousands of people around the world to better understand what the customer journey looks like today. And while there's no single customer journey that occurs in 100% of cases, what we find is that most customers go through 4 stages in their interactions with companies. And that most commonly, those stages happen in the order that you see on the screen right now. So the most common customer life cycle today begins when someone discovers your brand or your product or your services or your promotion. When they learn about you in the first place and decide whether or not to put you into their consideration set. And if you pass that hurdle, right, if you make it into their consideration set, they might continue to the second stage of the customer life cycle, which is where they explore your products and your services and your brand in more detail to get a better understanding if what you have to offer meets their needs, if the product is right, if the price is right, and if you're the kind of company with whom they'd like to do business. Again, if you clear that hurdle, hopefully they come and they buy from you, and we consider that the third stage of the customer life cycle. And after people buy, increasingly, they move on to the fourth stage of this customer life cycle, which we call engage. And I know engagement's a bit of a loaded phrase, a bit of a loaded word. It means everything, and yet somehow it means nothing at the same time. But when we say engage in the context of this customer life cycle, we're specifically referring to existing customers coming and interacting with the companies with whom they've done business after the point of purchase. And we see that happening more and more. And there are a lot of reasons people might engage with companies after they buy from them. Maybe they have a customer service issue that needs to be resolved. Maybe they simply want to express their affinity for the company from whom they bought. Perhaps they want to get more information on how to make better use of the products that they've purchased. But whatever the reason for that post-purchase engagement, these engagements give us, as companies and as marketers, a chance to drive new discovery, either by introducing those engaged customers to the other things we have to offer them, or by asking them to pass word along to their friends and peers. and creating discovery amongst a whole new audience. Either way, engagement can lead to discovery, and that renews the customer life cycle. So these are the most common 4 stages we see in the customer journey today: discover, explore, buy, and engage. And that's the most common order in which we see people going through that customer life cycle. And once we've done the survey work and established that this is what most customer journeys look like today, we took the next step. And we said, what channels do people turn to at the different stages of their journey? When they're discovering, which channels and media options and touch points do they rely upon? When they're exploring, where do they go to get the information they need to make a purchase decision? We did a lot of research, and what we found was this. When people are at the discover phase of the customer journey, they're most likely to turn to a mix of different channels. In fact, when we ask online users here in the US where they most commonly learn about new brands and products and services, they say that the number one place they learn about these things is from friends and family members and from colleagues as well. They learn about new products and services through word of mouth. But it's worth noting there are a lot of other important channels that people use to learn about new brands and products as well. And just behind word of mouth, friends and family, is online search. It turns out people use unbranded search keywords to discover which products and services might fit into their consideration set. So if I'm interested in a new 15-megapixel digital SLR camera, I might go to Google and search for 15-megapixel digital SLR. And the list of results that Google gives me tells me which products and brands might meet my needs. It helps me discover which options might fit into my consideration set. Not just that, but it turns out a lot of traditional media channels are still important to how people discover as well, including TV ads, in-store promotions, and even spam. Honest-to-God postal spam is still a way that some people discover new brands and products and services. There's a whole mix of different channels that people use when they're ready to discover. And at Forrester, when we add these up, we think of them as reach channels. These are the way that marketers can reach out to their target audience and help that target audience discover their brand in the first place, the products and the services they have to offer, or the promotions that they're doing. Again, though, once people discover us in the first place, hopefully we cross that threshold, right? We get to the next stage of their customer journey. Hopefully we're now part of their consideration set. And what we wanted to ask next was, where do you go as customers when you're ready to explore the options that you've put into your consideration set? And again, we find a wide range of different channels. It turns out when the people want to research the products and the services that they're considering, overwhelmingly they go online. And online, as we all know, hides a lot of different behavior. So if we dig a bit deeper on this data, what we find is that often the number one place people go online when they're exploring and researching and considering is back to search engines. Except now, instead of unbranded search keywords, they're using branded search keywords. I'm not searching for 15-megapixel digital SLR anymore. I'm searching for Nikon D50. Or the specific brand name of another camera that's in my consideration set. And when I go to Google or another search engine and I conduct that search, not only is it branded as opposed to the earlier unbranded search, it turns out that I'm not actually learning very much from Google or from the search engine at this point. I'm simply using it as a navigational tool to get to other places where I can get a lot of detail on the products I'm having a look at. And the number one place people get that detail, the number one place people go online to actually get the information they need when they're exploring and researching, is to the marketer's or the manufacturer's own website. Your site is the most common place people go to get lots of detailed information on whether your products or services meet their needs. It's also, as it turns out, the marketing channel that you control that your audience trusts the most. Nothing else you ever say to a prospect or a customer will be as trusted as the things you say to them through your website. We found that for almost every audience in almost every country that we've studied. So people use search at the point of exploration to get to our own websites as marketers, but they also go to other places to learn about the depth of information they're looking for. They go to retailers, both online and offline retailers, and they talk to salespeople and sales representatives. In some categories, they go to third-party ratings and review sites like Yelp and TripAdvisor. All of these channels have something in common, though. They all offer people the depth of information that they're looking for when they're trying to make a purchase decision. And because of that, we think of these as depth channels. This is where people go to get the deep information they need about whether what you're offering meets their needs and whether they should buy from you. It turns out, by the way, that the depth channel people use to explore, including your own website and the retailers through who you sell, as well as your sales team, these are also the channels people use to buy from us. So we believe these depth channels overwhelmingly serve not just the explore phase of the customer journey, but the buy phase of the customer journey as well. Okay, so now we've helped someone discover, we've gotten them to explore, hopefully they've made a purchase from us. That final stage of the customer life cycle, again, is post-purchase engagement. And once again, we turn to survey data to find out which channels people use when they want to engage with brands after the point of purchase. Perhaps surprisingly, the number one way people stay in touch with their favorite brands is by asking those brands to send them mail. More email than postal mail, but the reality is both of these show up on a list of people's favorite ways to stay in touch with brands. They say, "Hi brand, I enjoyed buying from you and I'd like to hear from you again. Here's my email address or my postal mail address." People also join loyalty programs if they want to keep hearing from brands from whom they've already purchased. Sometimes they go back to those brands' websites or retail stores. And this is where public social profiles make an appearance in the customer life cycle as well. This is a stage of the customer journey where people are going to go to a Facebook page that a brand has created or to a company's Twitter account or LinkedIn group to stay in touch with them that way. Again, it's a mix of different channels. It cuts across digital and traditional and a lot of the other silos that we're used to. And when we add these up, we think of these as relationship channels. These are the channels we as companies can use to build stronger relationships with our existing customers when those customers are looking for post-purchase engagement. So we have different stages of that customer life cycle served by different types of marketing channels. When our customers are discovering, as marketers, we have to serve them with reach channels. When they're exploring and buying, as companies, we have to serve them with depth channels. And when people want to engage with us after the point of purchase, we have to serve them with relationship channels. And because Forrester is a research company and research companies like acronyms, we have an acronym for this. We call it the marketing radar. Radar stands for reach and depth and relationship, the three types of marketing channels that you need to use to help guide your customers and prospects through the customer lifecycle. And it turns out that social media and social tools can play a role at all the different stages of this customer lifecycle. It turns out that social media has a role to play all the way through that marketing radar. For instance, when our customers are ready to discover new brands and products and services, and we want to reach them, word-of-mouth marketing can create that reach. One of my favorite examples of this happened when Radio Shack wanted to use social tools to increase the reach of its Holiday Hero Christmas promotion. It ran TV spots, it did in-store promotions and billboards as well, but they wanted to get a bit more reach. And so to help promote the Holiday Hero program, they started off by buying ads on Twitter, sponsoring a hashtag, and asking people to tweet back at them using the hashtag, "if I had superpowers." You want to be a holiday hero? Maybe that means you have superpowers. Tell us what you would do if you had superpowers this holiday season. And when people came back to them and said, "well, I'd like to buy this for my friend," or "I'd like to buy this item for my mom, that's what I would do with my holiday superhero powers," Twitter actually took their pictures and turned them into superheroes. Sorry, Radio Shack took those pictures and turned them into superheroes. So this lady said, "I would give an e-reader to my friend." And Radio Shack took their picture, had a graphic artist turn her into a superhero, dropped in an image of an e-reader, and then sent her the e-reader as well. You get a free device out of it, and you get an awesome drawing of you as a superhero. That's the kind of thing that people are going to share. They did it as well for this guy. They turned him into an Iron Man, and they put a tablet into his hands. Right? This is the kind of unique and interesting content people can't help but share. And as it turned out, people did share it. They made it into their profile picture on Twitter and Facebook and all of their other social sites, and they talked about it nonstop. And this word-of-mouth program from Radio Shack generated more than 70 million incremental brand impressions on Twitter. Not a bad day's work for a word-of-mouth marketing program. Again, social media can support the reach part of our marketing radar and help us drive additional discovery for our brands, our products, our services, or in this case, for our holiday promotions. Social can also fit at the depth layer of that marketing radar. And in particular, adding social tools to your own website gives people the depth of information that they're looking for. We've already seen that people most commonly turn to our own websites as marketers when they want to get more information and make a purchase decision. And if you want to give them additional depth of information, social tools can help you do that. Ally Bank's a great example here because if you don't know them, Ally is an online-only bank. They're asking people who've never passed an Ally branch on the street, who maybe have never heard of the brand before, to send them a bunch of money and say, don't worry, it's in safe hands. Well, they need to drive a lot more trust before people sign up for accounts and start shipping them money. And they drive that trust by adding social tools to their own website. That's why when you go to ally.com, one of the first things you see on every product page is ratings and reviews. And you can see front and center, their interest checking account gets an average of 4.2 stars from more than 1,000 customer ratings. And it's not just that basic, simple star review. You can click in and read all 1,099 ratings that were there when we took this screenshot. And it's not just a single 1 to 5 star rating from each customer. They're giving individual scores for the product features, for the kind of interest rate they got, for how easy it was to open the account, for the usability of the website. This is a lot of information that gives prospects the depth of information they're looking for to make a decision that, yeah, maybe I do trust this bank and it's the right one for me. Ally doesn't stop there, though. They add blogs to their site as well so that they can replace the kind of experience you've had if you walked in and talked to a branch manager, right? Here, they're giving general advice on financial money management. The blog post you see has nothing to do with Ally's products or services. They're simply answering the question, if I had a $1,000 tax refund this year, what should I do with the money? And they make great recommendations about how to spend or invest that money wisely, and none of the recommendations benefit Ally in any way, other than showing this audience that Ally cares about them and making them financially successful, building the trust and showing audiences that Ally is the kind of company with whom they'd like to do business. Even when the blog does talk about Ally's products in particular, it's not in hard pitch or sales mode. They're helping people understand the differences between the various financial products they offer so that prospects might choose the right product for their needs. Adding social tools to their own website helps Ally create the depth of information people are looking for to create the trust in the brand and help them choose the right product overall. And Ally attributes its social content program with driving hundreds of millions of dollars in new consumer deposits for this online-only bank. Finally, social, of course, is something that we can use to build stronger relationships. And in particular, we saw that Facebook pages and Twitter accounts started to show up at the post-purchase engagement phase of that customer lifecycle. This is why we think of Facebook pages and Twitter accounts primarily as social relationship marketing tactics. My favorite examples of this come from companies who understand they're not building new brand awareness from scratch on Facebook and Twitter. Rather, they're talking to their existing customers. And they help those existing customers get more value from the things they're already buying. Kraft is great at this. And even though Kraft Facebook page is just for the umbrella brand, they've got about 1 million likes on Facebook. Not for any individual product, not for Kraft macaroni and cheese or Velveeta or anything else. They've got 1 million likes just for the umbrella brand of Kraft. And recognizing that these are people who like Kraft and all the various processed foods it has to offer, Kraft decides to put lots of recipes onto its Facebook page. It's not trying to introduce you to new products from scratch. It's saying, hey, you might have already bought our Oscar Mayer carving board pulled pork product, and we're going to give you a recipe for how to turn that Oscar Mayer carving board pulled pork into Hawaiian barbecue pork sliders. By offering recipes, they're helping their existing customers, their biggest fans, get more value from the Kraft products they're already buying. It's a perfect strategy for this audience because remember, the people who like your Facebook page, who engage with you on Facebook and Twitter, are overwhelmingly your existing customers and your existing fans. Your job is not to introduce them to your brand for the first time. They're already loyal customers for the most part. Your job is to help them like your brand even more than they already do, and a great way to do that is by helping them get more value from the purchases that they're already making. So this is how social media fits all the way through that customer life cycle, and how social tools can provide the reach and the depth and the relationships that we as marketers need to offer our customers to help guide them through that customer life cycle. But here's the thing. I've been talking about social media for a few minutes now, and you haven't once heard me say the word listening. So how exactly does listening fit into this story? Well, we believe that a good listening program, a good social intelligence program, forms the foundation of all the social marketing tactics we've been talking about so far. We believe that social listening is the start of a good social marketing program, and that social listening tools are the foundation of the social technology value chain. Just think about what it is you need to accomplish as a social marketer. No matter what you're going to do in the social space, you need to start by planning. You need to have an understanding of who your audiences are, of where they spend their time in social media, and the topics that matter to them. If you don't plan based upon your audiences and their behaviors and preferences and the content they find interesting, you're not going to be able to execute a proper social media program. And once you've done that research and put a good plan in place, now you get to go execute. And that's where the things I've talked about for the past few minutes come in. This is where you might choose to reach new audiences through social, like Radio Shack did. How you might add social to your own site to provide more depth, like Ally Bank. Or how you might engage your existing customers in better relationships on public social networks, like Kraft did. Maybe you're going to engage in one of these three social strategies, maybe two, or maybe even all three of them. But no matter which of them you use, I hope you would then measure the impact those social programs had and use that measurement, use the insights from your measurement tools to do better planning next time around. This is what a good social strategy should look like. You plan. You can execute in one or two or even all three of these three ways. You measure and you use the measurement to do better planning again next time around. And social tools of different stripes are available to help you with most of these different tasks. In fact, when we think about social listening tools, whether I'm in a room with a social listening platform or not, I tell every marketer I talk to, you can't run a good social program without a good listening platform. If you don't know your audience's behaviors and preferences and the topics that matter to them, you can't plan a good social program. It is the foundation of this entire set of social strategies. This is where we see social listening fitting most crucially into a good social marketing strategy. Of course, there are technologies and platforms that help us with the rest of this story as well. If you want to reach new audiences through social media, there's a category of vendors we call social reach platforms, and that includes both paid social advertising management players, the folks who help you bid for and manage your bids on Facebook ads and Twitter promoted tweets and things like that, but also word-of-mouth marketing platforms that help you identify influencers and then activate those influencers. If you choose to activate social by adding social tools to your own website to increase its depth, then we use social depth platforms for that. And that could include tools that help you add communities to your own website, but also those that help you add ratings and reviews and blogs to your own website. And if you choose to execute social media by engaging with people on social networks, then social relationship platforms will help you manage your Facebook page, your Twitter account, your LinkedIn group, help you track what people are saying about you so you can respond instantly, and help you schedule and publish tweets and Facebook posts as well. These are all the different social tools that marketers use to help them execute the social strategies. Now, we're still waiting to see better measurement solutions exist or come into the marketplace, but right now, whether we're talking about planning or executing social strategies, there are tools out there that can help us with all those different pieces. And again, social listening platforms really do form the foundation for a lot of what we're talking about. A good social tool, a good social listening tool and good social listening strategy will help you learn about your audience and that audience's needs. Help you understand where they're engaging and interacting socially, the topics that matter to them, and in helping you understand your audience, it's going to give you the insight to craft a good social strategy. It's going to give you the information that you need to decide how best to interact with those audiences in social media, in which locations and on which topics as well. These programs on an ongoing basis also give us the insights we need to inform day-to-day engagements. When we talk about how social listening tools are great for planning your strategy, that could be planning your entire 2014 social marketing strategy, or it could be your community manager planning their afternoon. right? This can happen at a macro level or at a micro level. But unless you're paying attention to what people are saying about you in social media and about the products and the categories you work in social media, it's going to be really hard for you to build a solid foundation for your social marketing program. So social intelligence initiatives provide the data and the insights that marketers need to execute good social media programs. Remember, though, social platforms, listening platforms generally, are not designed for marketers to engage. And when we talk to marketers about what they're doing with their listening platforms and their listening data, we see that they use it for insight, for market research, for brand tracking, and much less for active execution in the social media space. Things like influencer marketing and lead generation. As marketers, again, we have to think about using listening platforms as insights tools, as planning tools, and then we can turn to other types of strategies, whether it's a reach strategy, a depth strategy, or a relationship strategy, to actually get the most out of social, to go and execute based on what we've learned from those listening tools. So what I want to do with the rest of my time today is talk a little bit more about social reach marketing in particular. The piece you see on the upper left-hand side of this slide, and how social reach marketing can help us provide the discovery that introduces new customers to our brand, our product, our service, or our offering. So what exactly do we mean when we talk about social reach marketing? Well, we're talking about using social tools to help you drive discovery and to help you find new prospects and drive new people into your customer lifecycle. This is an opportunity for you to get your brand or your product into people's consideration sets, even if they're not already paying attention to you in social media. That's the beauty of social reach. It takes social tools, which most companies and marketers are limited to talking to the people who've chosen to follow them or to hit the like button on their Facebook page, and it extends our ability to talk, not just to the people who are already following us or liking us on Facebook, but to broader audiences. Social reach is how we get our message out to whoever is in our target audience, to drive discovery amongst that audience, and again, to turn them into prospects, to get them into the customer life cycle. And I want to make a point right now, which is we're not really talking about the difference between paid and free. Social reach marketing, like any kind of reach marketing, sometimes is paid and sometimes is organic. That line exists everywhere. How much of a TV campaign succeeds because of the reach that you buy as a marketer, and how much of the success and the reach of that campaign exists because you made a really good 30-second spot and people can't help but talk about it over the water cooler. In the search space, we talk about organic versus paid search, and the reality is any successful search program is going to rely upon some combination, some mix of both organic and paid. And when we think about social reach marketing, we think about that same dynamic. Sometimes the way that you reach people and drive discovery in social media is going to be paid. In other times, it will be organic. The reality is, no matter which of these programs you run, you're going to wind up with a blend of both paid and organic within social reach, just as you have a blend of paid and organic in all the other reach media that you use. But understand that spectrum, and understand that depending on the source you use to drive social reach, you're going to change the amount of trust that your social reach message contains, and also your ability to target that social reach message. So let's have a look at some of the different ways that we can get messages out to new audiences through social media. And we'll start on the left-hand side of this screen with the marketers inside your own organization. All of you, most likely, and the people who work on your teams. As marketers, we have the ability to generate social reach. And of course, as marketers, we're always going to be brand loyal, right? We're always going to be singing the company's tune because they pay us to sing their tune. And when we get the company's message delivered to audiences through social media, typically that means we're buying paid advertising, right? In the spectrum between paid and organic, the way marketers get brands' messages out to new audiences through social media is almost always by paying for that reach. In paying for that reach, we're winning a guarantee of delivery. We're also winning a guarantee of accuracy. Paying for social ads means I can promise my boss that I will reach 1 million Bollywood fans with a message about my new DVD. And I can make sure that it's Bollywood fans and not people who like sports or other kinds of movies, right? If marketers run and are responsible for delivering the social reach messages, we can guarantee accuracy and we can guarantee reach. But what we lose with those guarantees is the trust that that message receives. And it turns out that just as users tend to tell us that their trust in most paid advertising messages is relatively low, people tell us that their trust in paid ads on social networks tends to be fairly low as well. So there are benefits and there are downsides to the marketers being the ones who achieve social reach for us. If we as marketers, if our marketing organization achieves that social reach, we get a big enough audience, we get the right audience, but that audience doesn't necessarily trust or pay attention to the messages that we're delivering. But there are other options if we slide along this scale. And if we move towards the center of the scale, we can see employees and channel partners and resellers, and we see customer advocates as well. These people are all in business with us in one way or another. Our employees and our partners and our resellers are in business with us because the more we sell, the more money they make, right? They're in business to help us succeed. Our customer advocates are in business with us, buying from us, but because they buy from us, they understand full well already the benefits of our products and services. And customer advocates know from daily or weekly usage of the things we have to offer exactly the benefits and the virtues of our products and our services. Because all these people are in business with us, they're all relatively likely to pass along the right message as well, right? So we have people who generally favor us, who generally like us, but we're losing a little bit of the guaranteed reach that we once had. If we buy ads, remember, we can promise our boss that we reach 1 million people. If we rely upon our employees and our resellers and our advocates to get the message along, we are much less guaranteed of actually reaching a wide audience. But the message is generally positive, and we are adding more trust to the equation. Because it's not coming from us as marketers, it's coming from our partners or even from our customers. These messages will be more trusted than the social ads that we deliver. But all the way on the right-hand side of that screen, you see a really interesting piece, which is category influencers. And we draw the line between advocates and influencers based on whether someone is a customer or someone is influential in our space without being a customer, right? When we talk about advocates, we're talking about people who do business with us already. They may or may not have wide influence for us to leverage, but they already do business with us and they already like us. When we talk about influencers, we're talking about people who may well not be customers of ours at all. Maybe before we reach out to them, they've never even heard of our brand or our product. But they set the tone of conversation in our industry or in our category. And they have great influence and reach in doing that. If we as marketers target these category influencers for our social reach programs, then we're gaining an immense amount of trust from the audience who ultimately receives that message. If one of the leading voices setting the conversation in our category starts saying nice things about us on their blog and their Twitter feed, on Facebook or anywhere else, then that has a lot of trust. It also can lead to a lot of reach, although this has the least guaranteed reach of any of the options in our model. The problem is, the authors, of course, are entirely independent. And these are the audiences who we're never quite sure if they're going to say something positive or negative about us. All these different options exist, whether it's the marketers in our own teams buying paid ads, whether it's word of mouth generated by resellers and partners and advocates, or whether it's coming from category influencers. And all of these carry benefits but drawbacks as well. We need to balance all of these inside a good social reach program. But at the end of that analysis, we wind up with 3 basic options, right? So there's what we think of as influencer marketing. And to illustrate this, I'll use some examples from the Keystone XL debate that's raging online and everywhere else right now. And when we think about influencer marketing, we're talking, in this instance, about people like Becky Bond, who's one of the leaders of a group called Credo. If you don't know Credo, it's actually a pretty interesting organization. It's a business that effectively is in business to make money so that they can promote social causes. So Becky Bond and the rest of Credo sell things like mobile service as a way of building stronger connections with socially minded customers so they can tell those socially minded customers to take the pledge to resist the Keystone XL pipeline, for instance. This is someone who sets the tone of conversation in environmental issues online. If you were going to try to use her as part of your reach strategy on this topic, that would be what we define as influencer marketing. That's not someone who's officially attached to any of the players involved. It's just someone setting the general conversation and leading the thinking online about environmental issues. All the way on the other end of the spectrum, we have things like social advertising. And ExxonMobil is one of the companies that stands to benefit from the Keystone XL pipeline, is buying ads to talk about how environmentally conscious they are and how the pipelines they build are really good and really safe. Whether you believe it or not is up to you, but they're using social advertising as a form of social reach to get out a very clear and a very on-brand message that says exactly what they want it to say and reaches exactly the number of people they want it to reach. And somewhere in the middle, there's what we think of as advocate marketing, where someone who has a rooting interest here is going out and speaking about this topic as well. And for ExxonMobil, that's Senator Hoeven from North Dakota. He's a big proponent of the Keystone Pipeline, and he wants to make sure it gets built because he believes that the people who he works for will benefit from that. Right? So influencer marketing is just a general thought leader leading the conversation on this topic online, not necessarily attached to any one company or side of the conversation. Advocate marketing, in this case, would be someone who is attached to one side of the conversation, and you know going into the conversation that their point of view is going to be in favor of one side or the other. You know that they're going to be very positive towards, in this case, ExxonMobil and the Keystone Pipeline. And social advertising is coming directly from the source. It's a paid-for ad where the message is exactly what the company wants it to say, and it reaches exactly the right number of people. But what I want to finish up by talking about is the Becky Bond part of this, right? The influencer marketing part of this. How do we as companies go out and find the people who are generally influential in our categories, who are not necessarily attached to us, they're not necessarily customers of ours, but they're so visible and important in the online conversation in our category that we want to try to use them to get our message out to a wider social audience. So let me talk for a few minutes about that and what we think of as influencer marketing best practices. You may be asking, well, why would I do this influencer marketing anyway? I can already buy the paid ads you talked about. We can already turn to our resellers, our employers, and our employees and our customer advocates and use them to get word of mouth out through social media. Well, the reality is influencers are probably already talking about you and the things that your company is doing in social media. Whether they're customers of yours or not, whether they have a rooting interest for or against you, they're probably already engaged in conversation about you in one way or another. And if we as companies can find and engage these influencers, then we can start to change the conversation. We can start to shift the things they're saying about us, hopefully, to at least be a bit more positive. Whether it's positive or negative right now, we can always improve the tone of conversation and the accuracy of the message, hopefully, by influencing these influencers. So let me ask you a question. On the screen right now, we have two pictures. On the left, if you don't recognize him, is a man named Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, one of the most successful investors in the history of the world and one of the richest men in the world today. And on the right is the logo of an actual guy named Joe Sixpack. He's a blogger in Maryland who talks a lot about beer online. So, by show of hands, who do we think is more influential? Who thinks that Warren Buffett is the more influential of these two? Shh, don't ruin it for me. Who here thinks that Joe Sixpack is more influential? I like beer, so I would vote for Joe Sixpack. But I think we've already got the answer, right? It's impossible to answer that question unless we know what category we're talking about. There is no such thing as a universal influencer. I'll be honest, I'd never heard of Joe Sixpack until last week. And I was talking to a colleague, and he told me about this blogger he liked to follow in Maryland who talks a lot about beer. But depending on your company and the audience you're trying to reach and the category that you work in, Joe Sixpack might be infinitely more influential than Warren Buffett is. Of course, if you want to talk about investing and money management and financial matters, then Warren Buffett's probably the better choice. The reality is, though, flat influence as a single score doesn't really do much for us, right? George Orwell would be proud. Some influencers are more equal than others. The reality is you don't treat all of your customers equally. You order them and you rank them and you choose to serve them in order based upon their importance to your business. And likewise, you shouldn't treat the people who talk about you and your category or the people who exert influence in social media equally either. We need to be clear and deliberate about finding the right influencers for our needs and in our category. So when you go out there and look for influencers, remember, influencers aren't necessarily your best customers. In fact, in most cases, category influencers aren't already your customers at all. You can't simply go through your CRM database and pull out the highest spenders and assume that these are influencers you can tap into. You're going to have to do better if you want to use influencer marketing. So start just by asking around. Talk to the customer-facing teams in your organization, whether it's sales, customer service, or anyone else, and ask them who's making noise in our space. When you look online at the conversation in our category and about our products, who do you notice and who should we pay attention to? That, at the very least, is going to give you a starting point for understanding general category influencers. Look for influencers that influence other influencers. Now, I know that sounds a bit circular, but the reality is I work with a guy who's got about 2,000 Twitter followers, but almost everybody who's anybody in the digital marketing space pays attention to what he says. If I were to look at a simple map of his influence, I'd go, 2,000 followers doesn't buy me much. But when I realize that the things that Josh says get rebroadcast over and over and over again, that he shapes the way everyone thinks about this space, then all of a sudden he becomes a lot more important. So don't just look at the influence someone exerts in terms of the number of fans or followers they have, but pay attention to linkages between influencers and understand who influences the influencers. And of course, when doing all this, technology can help. This is a kind of place where understanding who's talking and how much they're talking, what category they're talking in, how much they get retweeted or recommended in different social sites, all of this can help you find the right people to reach out to and use as part of your influencer strategy. One of my favorite examples of this comes, unfortunately, from the marketing industry. We never like to use examples of good marketing that comes from marketing vendors because, again, it's a little bit circular. This example, though, we rejected when we first saw it because it was just so circular and so inside baseball, and then we sat down and actually read through the example, and it's really good. There's a company called Rise Interactive that works in the influence marketing space, and they wanted to show people who are influential about influence the influence of influence. This is what I mean when I say it sounds a bit circular at the start. But they found one guy that they wanted to reach out to and show him the power of the targeted influence content they could create. So they picked the one influencer they wanted to start with, and they looked at his profile and everything he'd posted online, and they figured out he was a big, big football fan. So they targeted Mr. Travis Wright with Kansas City Chiefs infographic that was made especially for him. They actually created an entire infographic that wasn't just about the power of social media, but that had a Kansas City Chiefs theme all the way through it as a way of making sure they got his attention. Well, that's pretty cool. And if someone made one of those for me focused on, say, Chelsea Football Club in London, which is my favorite sports team, I'd pay attention. I'd probably talk a lot about it. Just like when Radio Shack made superhero costumes for its customers, they were pretty impressed, and they talked about it. And Travis Wright got this infographic and talked and talked and talked, and this actually snowballed into one of the better viral marketing programs we've seen over the last year, all starting with a single influencer who they gave very special attention to and gave him such a unique piece of content, he couldn't help but notice it and talk about it and pass it on. A great example from our point of view, of influencer marketing done right, and that they identified someone who had the ability to direct influence and conversation in the market they were targeting, and they gave him great content to use and pass along. Radisson Hotels doesn't sound like a very fashionable brand of hotels, but they're doing influencer marketing correct as well. In fact, Radisson recently celebrated its 50th anniversary, and they wanted to celebrate, amongst other things, by giving away free hotel nights to 50 different people. And rather than just finding influential bloggers in the travel space and giving the nights to them, they asked those bloggers to give the nights away to their followers. So they reached out to Vagabondish and 49 other influential travel blogs, and they said, we've got free hotel stays, not for you, but for you to give away to your followers based on whatever criteria you like. And some ran sweepstakes and random number generator contests. Some asked people to tell stories and pick the best stories. They chose a bunch of different ways to give away these nights, but in the end, Radisson was able to get the attention not just of the 50 influencers, but of all of their fans and followers and readers as well. And perhaps the bravest example I'm going to show you today comes from Microsoft. And Microsoft knows that people aren't necessarily fans of its mobile operating system, and that not everyone believes that their Surface tablet is something that's going to be very useful. And in particular, one very influential blogger on the topic of digital games was highly critical of the Microsoft Surface Pro. And even though games isn't necessarily a category that Surface was targeting, they knew that this was an audience that could be valuable to them. That if the people who like to play digital games have a fair bit of money to spend and are very likely to buy digital devices. And so they reached out to Gabe, the guy who runs the Penny Arcade website, and they sent him a free Surface Pro and said, use it, test it, ask us questions, and he did. And in the end, he posted a review that was mostly positive. Is Gabe, if you've ever read Penny Arcade, I think you might know his personality. He's a bit of an off-the-cuff guy. He rants and raves on here a bit about Surface Pro. He talks about how he doesn't like Microsoft as a company. He uses curse words in relation to the product that he was sent. But overall, he kind of liked it. And his review said, I went into this thinking it would be a piece of crap. In the end, I actually kind of liked it. It's a pretty good device. Now, a lot of PR firms or PR pros would worry about that. That's not an unvarnished positive review. It's a mixed review with an ultimately positive message at the end. But the reality is, he started by criticizing them. Even if they didn't turn him into a lover of the device, they went from having a continuous stream of off-the-cuff negative comments about their device to having an overall positive impression about the device posted on this guy's website. And he did it all in a voice that was his own and that was ultimately very influential to his audience. And there are a lot of lessons that we can get from these examples, but I'll leave you with 3. First, make sure you start by focusing your efforts. And that doesn't mean targeting everyone on Earth that you think might be influential. Actually, starting with a well-selected, limited list of influencers is going to be more effective for most companies than starting with an enormous list. Now, Rise Interactive maybe took that a step further than most. Again, they started their word-of-mouth program by targeting a single influencer. A pretty brave move, but one that ultimately paid off for them. We'd encourage you to maybe target more than one person with your influencer program, but make sure you're not trying to target the entire world. Make sure you're not trying to boil the entire ocean, right? Focus on a relatively limited group of influencers, and your efforts will be more effective. Number 2, figure out the incentives that work both for your brands and for the people you're trying to talk to. Radisson gave away those hotel nights not directly to the travel bloggers. Number 1, because they wanted to make sure that the message got out to a wider audience, but number 2, because they didn't want to be seen to be buying the affection of these bloggers. By asking the bloggers to give the nights away to their fans, the bloggers weren't directly getting any monetary value out of this. They're getting the credibility of having been selected by Radisson as one of the 50 most important travel bloggers, but they weren't getting any cash value. They weren't being bought as influencers. And that's important. That's the kind of thing that builds trust both amongst the influencers you're trying to reach and the audiences they're speaking to on your behalf. And finally, don't try to change the influencer's voice. It sounds crazy, but you would be surprised how many marketers try to control the message and the tone of the content the influencers they're targeting post. And you can't do it. If you try, you just wind up looking a bit silly and undermining your own program. And again, not everyone's going to say things that are entirely positive about you. Gabe at Penny Arcade doesn't love Microsoft. He doesn't love the Microsoft tablet, but he likes it a little bit. And you know what? That's a big improvement compared to where he was a couple of months ago. So follow these examples. right? Make sure that you're selecting a limited group of influencers. Find incentives that work to get their attention without buying them off and giving them the heebie-jeebies. And don't worry about the voice they use. By engaging them and giving them good products and good attention, you're going to wind up improving the tone of the conversation. And that's the most important piece. So thank you guys very much, and best of luck with your influencer marketing.